The story happened with my cousin Ken. That year, Ken dropped out of school early and drove a coal truck with his father. That night, there was my uncle and brother Ken and a few other colleagues. The group filled 2 large trucks with coal and started preparing to transport them. The trip was relatively long, so at midnight they started to depart. The trip was still going smoothly until down the pass. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning when suddenly my uncle and Ken's car had a problem. Here was the pass, and all around the forest there was no place to fix the car. It was bad luck. After thinking for a while, Ken got out of the truck. He lit a lighter for a cigarette and waited for the other 2 of his colleagues' truck to come and ask for their help. After that, Mr. Ken smoked while looking for a place to go to the toilet. Suddenly he saw a faint light in the distance. This thing made my brother curious because it was almost morning. Why, there were still people turning on lights in the middle of the forest. Looking closer, it looked like they were holding a small stage. Could it be that people here have a late-night festival? People also began to sing, and strangely the light emitted from the stage looked very dim, like the lights used for the old stage types. Waiting for the other truck to arrive seemed long and boring. My cousin began to walk towards the stage, still holding a cigarette. When he arrived, he realized that the stage was very small. A few spectators were watching the show. Ken's appearance did not attract the attention of the guests sitting around, but the girl who sang Boy on stage seemed to keep an eye on him, glancing at him when he entered. Normally, my cousin didn't like this kind of singing, but somehow he found it very good and interesting that day. For a moment, Ken was also swept away by the performance and joined the applause of everyone present. What Ken found strange was why people organized singing at this late hour. But then something stranger started to happen. Suddenly, the curtain on the stage seemed to be on fire. The fire was getting bigger, but no one seemed to notice it. With a cigarette in hand, Ken saw that strange thing happen, but no one reacted at all. The fire was loud, burning and spreading all over the curtains, but the singer was still singing on it. Brother Ken began to panic and worried. He glanced around, but no one seemed to have any intention of putting out this fire. Seeing this, he shouted to let everyone know about the fire, but the more he shouted, the more they remained motionless. Even stranger, couldn't they see that the fire was getting bigger and bigger? Why was no one reacting? That left Ken momentarily frozen. Only then did he realize that the people sitting here had very strange attitudes. They sat motionless, like statues. Ken felt this to be a little creepy. But the fire that was burning up there was the big problem. Ken still tried to call everyone to put out the fire. Ken shouted louder to get attention. At this time, the audience suddenly reacted to Ken's noise and turned to stare at Ken. They looked very weird. Ken was so scared that he fell backwards, his eyes wide and mouth open, unable to speak. He glanced up at the stage. Both of whom were performing on had also begun to burn with flames, but they were still singing. More frightening, the fire made their skin wrinkled and scorched, but they still calmly stood and sang. Their clothes were burned, even though the fire was slowly engulfing them. But the bigger the fire, the better they sang. My cousin told me that his legs were numb and he couldn't sit up when he tried at that time. So he tried to scream, hoping someone would hear and come to save him. The sound of footsteps woke him up and took his eyes off the stage. The scene at this time made Ken show extreme fear. He found himself surrounded by the audience who had been watching the song earlier. They were standing around him. Their eyes had no pupils, were white, and stared at him as if they wanted to eat him alive. The surrounding area was very quiet. The truck of the older colleagues hadn't arrived yet, and his father was busy repairing the broken truck above. Screaming until now was hoarse. Ken could no longer scream, only stammering in vain. Suddenly the phone in his pocket began to ring loudly. It was like an alarm clock, making his mind more alert. But because he was so shaken, he struggled to get his phone out of his pocket. Suddenly, there was a voice calling from afar. It was Ken's father's voice. Only then did Ken dare to breathe a sigh of relief. He turned to look in the direction of the stairs going down and saw the figure of his father standing in the distance and calling out Ken. Suddenly, looking around, the people just now disappeared without knowing. But then they must be ghosts. Ken also looked towards the stage. The performers and the lights also disappeared. Now, only the old and tattered stall remained, which must have been abandoned for a long time. So there was no performance. Maybe he was teased by the devil. Ken's face was dull and sweaty, dumbfounded by everything that had just happened before his eyes. At this time, his father's call once again awakened him from his stupor. His body was shaking to the point that he had no strength left, but he still managed to get up. Ken's whole body still felt apart, so he tripped while running. But Ken did not dare to stop, did not dare to turn his back to look. He only knew how to hide and run. Only when running to the place, seeing his father, Ken dared to stop and collapsed because of exhaustion. Seeing that his son was not well, my uncle knew that something bad must have happened, so he and the other two helped Ken up and asked for everything. Ken's face was still pale and panicked by everything that had just happened. My cousin started stammering about his encounter with ghosts and was almost harmed by them. After hearing this, everyone was shocked. 3 people saw that Ken could no longer walk, so they helped Ken into the truck to quickly move away from the place. Later, Ken continued to do his work with his father, but he never dared to go out at night again. Only later, when he ran that route many times, he heard people living nearby tell him that many years ago, a singing troupe had set up camp here to prepare to open a stage to perform for the people in the village to listen. But someone smoked and accidentally let the cigarette butts fly into the performance equipment, causing a fire. But it was late at night. Everyone was sleeping. No one knew. And then both the tent and the stage burned down. As a result, nearly 20 people were killed in that terrible fire.